The year was 1518. The city of Strasbourg, nestled in the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, bustled with life. It was a time of both prosperity and hardship, where the streets were filled with the sounds of daily commerce and the chatter of townsfolk. Merchants hawked their wares, children played in the cobblestone streets, and the summer sun beat down upon the city. The air was filled with the scent of fresh bread and the distant hum of a blacksmith's hammer. Yet, in this scene of ordinary life, something extraordinary was about to unfold. The townspeople were unaware that their lives were on the brink of a bizarre and unsettling chapter. A woman named Frau Troffea stepped into a narrow street and began to dance. Her movements were slow at first, almost hesitant, as if she were testing the waters of an unseen rhythm. There was no music, no joyous occasion, only Frau Troffea swaying and jerking with increasing fervor. Her dance was not one of celebration, but of compulsion driven by an unknown force. Her movements were erratic, her face contorted in a grimace. It was as if she were battling an invisible enemy, her body moving in ways that defied reason and understanding. Passers-by stopped, intrigued and bewildered by the spectacle. They watched in a mix of fascination and horror, unable to look away from the strange scene unfolding before them. Some laughed, others whispered, but none could have predicted the strange and terrible events that Frau Troffea's solitary dance would unleash. What began as a single woman's inexplicable urge to dance would soon spread, gripping the city in a feverish and uncontrollable mania. Within days, dozens more had joined her, their bodies moving in the same frantic and unrelenting dance. The streets of Strasbourg became a stage for this eerie phenomenon. As more and more people succumbed to the dance, physicians and scholars were baffled, unable to explain the cause of this strange affliction. They watched helplessly as the dancers continued day and night without rest or respite. The townspeople turned to prayer, hoping for divine intervention to end the madness, but the dance continued, relentless and unyielding, leaving a trail of exhaustion and despair in its wake. The dance plague of 1518 remains one of history's most mysterious and unsettling events, a haunting reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the inexplicable forces that can drive us to the brink of madness. As the day wore on, Frau Troffea continued to dance, her energy seemingly inexhaustible. She twirled and spun, her feet moving in a frenzy that defied explanation. Onlookers were baffled, unable to comprehend what drove her to such relentless motion. Her face, a mask of both ecstasy and torment, told a story that words could not capture. By nightfall, her solitary performance had attracted a small crowd. People gathered, whispering among themselves, speculating about the cause of her strange behavior. Was it madness, possession, or perhaps a divine punishment? Theories abounded, but answers were scarce. The crowd grew larger, their curiosity piqued by the spectacle unfolding before them. Some watched with a mixture of amusement and apprehension, while others felt an inexplicable urge to join in. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of something extraordinary taking place. It was as if an invisible thread connected Frau Troffea to the onlookers, pulling them into her dance. The line between spectator and participant began to blur, and join in they did. One by one, then in twos and threes, people were compelled by an unseen force to mimic Frau Troffea's frantic movements. It was as if the dance had a life of its own, spreading from person to person like a contagion. The streets, once filled with the sounds of daily life, now echoed with the rhythmic stomping of feet and the rustle of skirts. The dancing spread like wildfire, consuming the city street by street. What began as an isolated incident quickly escalated into a full-blown epidemic. The city's residents found themselves caught in the grip of a force they could neither understand nor control. The dance was relentless, sparing no one in its path. Within days, what began as the peculiar behavior of a lone woman had transformed into a mass phenomenon. The streets were filled with dancers, their bodies moving in unison. Driven by an unseen compulsion, the city was alive with motion, a chaotic symphony of movement that defied reason. The dance had taken on a life of its own, a force of nature that could not be stopped. As many as 400 people, seized by the same inexplicable compulsion, danced day and night in the streets of Strasbourg. The city's inhabitants were both participants and prisoners in this bizarre spectacle. The dance showed no signs of abating. its grip on the people growing stronger with each passing day. The city was transformed, its streets a stage for a relentless, unending performance. The city, once a place of commerce and industry, had become a stage for a bizarre and terrifying spectacle. The normal rhythms of life were disrupted, replaced by the ceaseless dance. Merchants, craftsmen, and laborers found themselves drawn into the fray, their daily routines abandoned. Strasbourg had become a city consumed by dance, its people caught in the throes of an inexplicable and unstoppable force. As the days turned into weeks, the relentless dancing took a devastating toll. What began as a peculiar curiosity morphed into a public health crisis. Exhaustion, dehydration, and heart attacks plagued the dancers. Their bodies, pushed beyond their limits, began to fail. The cobblestone streets, once alive with the sounds of laughter and conversation, now echoed with the groans of the afflicted and the mournful cries of those who had lost loved ones to the relentless rhythm of the dance. The plague, for that is what it had become, tightened its grip on Strasbourg, leaving a trail of suffering and death in its wake. Section 4. Unraveling the mystery, theories of the dancing plague. The people of Strasbourg, desperate for answers, turned to the authorities and the clergy. They were in a state of panic, unsure of what had caused such a bizarre and terrifying phenomenon. The sight of their friends and family members dancing uncontrollably, sometimes to the point of exhaustion or even death, was both alarming and mystifying. The townspeople sought guidance and explanations from those they believed held the wisdom to understand such an event. What had befallen their city? Was it a curse from God? Many believed that the dancing plague was a form of divine punishment, a manifestation of God's wrath for some unknown sin. The religious leaders urged the people to pray and seek forgiveness, hoping that their piety would bring an end to the suffering, a demonic possession, or perhaps a strange, unknown illness. Some speculated that the dancers were possessed by evil spirits, and exorcisms were performed in an attempt to rid them of these malevolent forces. Others, however, began to consider more earthly explanations, pondering whether an unknown disease could be responsible for the uncontrollable movements. Theories abounded, each more outlandish than the last. Physicians and scholars of the time debated various possibilities, from the influence of celestial bodies to the effects of toxic substances. Lack of scientific understanding and the prevalence of superstition made it difficult to reach a consensus. Some pointed to ergot poisoning, suggesting that a fungus contaminating the local rye supply had induced hallucinations and convulsions. Ergot, a type of fungus that grows on rye, can produce alkaloids that cause severe physical and psychological symptoms. This theory posited that the contaminated bread consumed by the townspeople led to the bizarre dancing episodes. Others spoke of mass psychogenic illness, a form of mass hysteria fueled by stress and anxiety. The theory suggested that the extreme stress and hardships faced by the people of Strasbourg, including famine, disease, and social unrest, had triggered a psychological response that manifested as uncontrollable dancing. This collective behavior, driven by the power of suggestion and the shared experience of trauma, spread rapidly through the community. Still, others whispered of religious fervor, suggesting that the dancers were devout followers of St. Vitus, the patron saint of those afflicted with chorea, a nervous disorder characterized by involuntary movements. The belief was that the dancers were seeking the saint's intercession, hoping for relief from their affliction through their fervent devotion. The patron saint of those afflicted with chorea, a nervous disorder characterized by involuntary movements. This theory intertwined religious belief with medical symptoms, reflecting the complex interplay of faith and science in medieval society. Each theory, whether rooted in religion, medicine, or psychology, offered a glimpse into the fears and hopes of the people of Strasbourg as they struggled to understand and overcome the mysterious dancing plague. Section 5. A city's futile battle against an invisible enemy. Desperate to halt the spread of the dancing plague, city officials took drastic measures. They banned music and dancing in the streets, hoping to quell the strange compulsion that gripped their citizens. They erected stages and hired musicians to play soothing melodies, believing that this might restore harmony to the afflicted. However, their efforts proved futile. The plague continued unabated, its grip on the city tightening with each passing day. The authorities, out of options and gripped by fear, resorted to more desperate measures, confining the dancers to wooden enclosures and even resorting to exorcisms. Section 6. The music fades. The end of the Strasbourg plague. As suddenly and mysteriously as it began, the dancing plague subsided. Exhausted, physically and emotionally spent, the dancers gradually ceased their frenzied movements. Their bodies, ravaged by weeks of relentless activity, were left to heal. The streets of Strasbourg, once a stage for a bizarre and terrifying spectacle, fell silent. The music had faded, the dancers stilled. The city, slowly and tentatively, began to rebuild. Yet the shadow of the dancing plague lingered, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the capricious nature of fate.